All right, boys, we are live. This is episode 48 of the Deconstruction Podcast, brought to you by Jobtable, the simplest way to grow and manage your construction business. Today, we are diving into a story. We're calling this like a bit of an emergency podcast here because we're getting into a story that's becoming more common across job sites across the country, and it's one that a lot of contractors are quietly talking about. We're hearing a lot of it on the inside as well. So, contractor recently shared what happened when he bid on a project. His price came in around 90,000, totally normal for the scope of the project. But the winning bid, it was about $30,000, a third of the cost. So curious, he went into the site, see how this company was pulling it off. Inside the building were more than 10 workers running circuits, installing boxes, pulling wire, but none of them were licensed electricians. They were migrant workers brought in under LMIA. Stands for Labor Market Impact Assessment. This is a federal program meant to help employers hire temporary foreign workers when no Canadian workers are available. So that's what this program is. So this company's model, this contractor's model was simple, like bring in like a large crew of LMIA workers, train each worker to do specific tasks, work around the clock, finish the project fast, and have a licensed journeyman show up at the end just to sign off on the project. So that raises a lot of big questions, as you might imagine, which we're going to cover today. Like, is this legal? How does LMIA work? What is it? Like, what does provincial law say about this? And more importantly, what does this mean for trades across the country trying to compete fairly? So we're going to break it down today, the laws, these loopholes, the economic pressure, and just the long-term impact on skilled trades. So let's get into it. Now, joining us today is Ben Bruce. I think your third time on the show, Ben. Electrical contractor out in Winnipeg, who's been in the trades long enough to recognize when things are shifting. And he came across a situation identical to what we're hearing as well. And so it raised a lot of the same questions about the legality, the safety, the fairness, what the future looks like for contractors. So Ben, thanks for coming on. We appreciate you doing this on last minute's notice. But let's start there. Why don't we start with, what your experience was, what you saw or seeing on job sites, and, what's going through your mind as you realize how some of these companies are operating.
Yeah, thanks for having me, gentlemen. It's good to see you guys again. And it was really interesting. We had put in a bid, like Costa said, and I was kind of taken aback by the price that came back because we're not often so far off the mark that there's, like a $60,000 discrepancy between what we bid and what somebody else bid. Um, but we're invited down by one of the contractors from site to have a look at what was going on, which was really interesting. And I've heard a lot of the stories. I know that we've talked about the labor shortages and all that kind of stuff, but it was kind of something else to sort of see it in action. And they were sort of talking about this as though it's some sort of well-oiled machine, how they put up these buildings, they do the electrical, and they do other work here. And like you were saying, Costa, they'll work round the clock to get it done. It's crazy. So I was invited down. I went down to have a look, and kind of as you described, it's a wood stud building. Picture a wood stud building. You're walking into this. It's going to be a multifamily unit, and you have guys running all over the place, pulling wires, putting up boxes, roughing in this building with electrical. And in talking with this contractor, who is not the owner of the business, I learned that they're not electricians, they're not apprentices, nobody's registered to do this. They have just been trained on their specific task, and they're given, one guy will be, a couple guys will be the wire pulling crew, a couple guys will put up boxes, a couple guys will learn how to put in receptacles, things like that. And this is all hearsay from the contractor, but they're working on this sort of LMIA system, and they can be super efficient, and they can come in and build these buildings for you, get it done super quick. Their time frame was about the third of our schedule, um, and come in at just an unbelievable cost. So of course, naturally, the first thing I did after going looking at that, I was there for maybe half hour, 45 minutes. Number one, I reported the job site um, to the the powers that be, and then I came back and I sat in my office and I just kind of ruminated over it for a little bit, and I started typing out an email to Charlie just to kind of get my thoughts out and sort of explain what I'd seen. 'Cause it's one thing to hear about these things, a completely other to witness it in practice. And even now, just thinking back to it, I'm kind of bewildered, and it's surreal. I'm not sure how else to explain it other than, it's almost like you walked into Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, but not in a good way.
Yeah. No, like so obviously we're none of us are lawyers here, but just understanding what's actually legal here. Like what is LMIA supposed to be used for? From what I understand, so it's a labor market impact assessment. It's a federal program under Employment and Social Development of Canada, and its purpose seems to be very clear. Like this situation does not clearly illegal, right? This is for it allows employers to hire temporary foreign workers when no Canadian workers are available. They have to pay them industry standard wages, and it has to ensure that they are not displacing Canadians. So, based on those three like checklist criteria, um, it's clearly not legal. So the question is like, how are they operating like that?
Yeah, absolutely not at all. And I know we've had um, like health and safety stop down at the job sites and ask our apprentices for their cards. They've asked for electrical licenses from guys in the past every now and again. Um, and this, like, they couldn't produce any of that, I would think. Um, how are they operating? I have no idea. That's a great question because if I were to operate like that, we'd be finished.
So my question is also on that, for everybody listening, 90,000 to 30,000. I know a lot of people are going to be like, well, 60,000 spread, but we're talking now a percentage, right? Because if it's a million and then somebody's doing it for 300,000, there's literally no way, no contractor makes that type of money, right? On one project. Like a lot of people, I say it to everybody who's not in the trades. If you think that we're making 30, 40, 50, 60, 70%, you're out of your mind. You know what I mean? It's not reality, right? So again, there's a cost of material to do a project. Like I'm, in full-time estimating in my own company, right? So it's like you have the raw cost of material, which there's no way around that unless you're stealing the material, right? So getting back to this LMIA program, you have to pay fair wages. Well, if you're telling me that they have a ton of these guys around the clock, just by doing simple math, there's no way it can be done. So now the question comes to: is this are they exploiting the federal system and then you know screwing over you know Canadian construction workers at the same time, but then they're profiting off it as well, right? And what happens if this continues to go on, right? Because like you said, it was like I read the email. It was what, a 6-story building?
No, sorry, 3 stories.
Okay, doesn't matter. 3-story building. So even like even on the electrical side, right? Again, we're like me and Charlie, we're plumbers, but it's like, what's the safety? Like let's start there. Where does the safety lie? You can train somebody to put up, you know, boxes everywhere, right? You could train somebody to pull wire, but where does the safety come in? Like let's start there, right? Like how much of a safety concern is that?
Huge, absolutely huge. Um, I probably said it before, but like most of the faults we see when we go out and troubleshoot, especially in residential, are arc faults. So if you're not making proper connections, if you don't know how to make a proper joint, um, Like we've seen, just even on a neutral, what people consider, something that's akin to ground can burn through a moret, burn through the box, and then cause you a whole lot of problems and maybe burn down your home. So that's my first safety concern. The second one is just like how do you maintain any kind of safety standards amongst employees when you're doing things like that, right? Like, do they have the proper safety gear? Do they have safety boots? Are they, do they have the proper tools? Do they have the proper things in place to do all that? And then on the flip side of that, what you're talking about, Johnny, is there's a cost to doing all that, right? We have a safety program. We have to do paperwork every day for our safety program and to maintain our safety certificates. Like there's a cost to doing all of that, and that's obviously not being taken into account when you're doing things in that way.
Yeah, and even sorry, just on the last note on that, what
Mm-hmm.
about the people that are renting those units, right?
Well, yeah.
They don't know better, right? All they know is it's been inspected, right? And again, look, I'm not taking anything away from electrical inspectors, plumbing inspectors, but it's not like they're going through checking every single wire, right? They're looking at how clean, the wires are run, or the box in the right places. But in the end of it, like if they're cutting corners like that, I could just imagine where are they getting the wire from? You know what I mean? Where are they getting these panels from? Right? Like, this opens up like such a big can of worms, and I'm actually shocked when I read this email to see this happen, like here, right? So, Charlie, you wanted to say, like, I know you're waiting to say.
Yeah, and to your point, the customer, whoever the person buying this home, is relying on the general contractor doing a good job and hiring the right people, right? They just that's just an assumption that they make, right? And they're spending a lot of money on this property, so they should get the product that they paid for. There's a lot to unpack here. This reminds me kind of about a job me and Johnny bid maybe 4 or 5 years ago, where on like I think 1.2 million for a building, somebody came in at like it was like 850, something like that, considerably lower than we were. And what didn't seem to make sense is the other competitive bids, we were all within 5% of each other except for this one other contractor. And it was disappointing because we had such a great relationship with the person building this building. And we tried to have a conversation with them where it wasn't even like, hey, we want this job. Obviously, we wanted the job, but it wasn't to convince them to give us the job. It was more that we were like concerned for them. Like, hey, listen, just whatever you decide, just watch your back, because this number, like we're being very honest with you, like we're being transparent with our numbers. This amount that they've gotten to, it just doesn't make sense, right? It's a scary low number. What ended up happening is we got a call, I think maybe 8 or 9 months into the project, and it had gone to shit, completely gone to shit, right? They had realized that they underpriced it. Their technicians weren't showing up to work. They had been paid to a certain, point of like a certain draw, and then they just kind of ghosted the job. They stopped showing up and kind of disappeared off the face of the earth. So obviously, I don't know which company this was. So they may not have been one of these instances where you had these migrant workers coming in. But the reason I want to start here is because being underbid in such a large amount, it's frustrating because we try to do everything the right way. We try to not cut any corners. We go through the drawings with a fine-tooth comb. We have estimators, project managers, and there are a lot of resources that go into pricing this job. As I'm sure you know, right? The amount of time that we spent looking at these drawings and bidding competitively on numerous jobs every single week. So number one, to spend a month of time and resources on this project only to kind of get the rug swept from underneath their feet is very frustrating. Now, assuming that, let's say it was these migrant workers, or speaking on your situation, I'm sick and tired of this city and this country that we live in, where we are asked to toe the line at every single turn, right? We pay some of the highest taxes in the world. We have to go to school for our apprenticeship. You have to go to school 3 times. It's a 5-year apprenticeship. So I think you guys have to go to school 4 times, if I'm not mistaken. Point being is there's a lot of hoops that you have to jump through. You don't just become a plumber or an electrician anymore. There's a lot of training that's involved. Your apprentices have to be registered. Beyond that, to your point, the safety aspect of it, you have to have WMIS, your fall arrest, working at heights, and the list goes on and on and on and on, right? We're constantly checked on these job sites, right? So we toe the line. We follow the rules. So now all of a sudden, these guys come in and they find some loophole where, they're able to bring migrants in to work under the pretense that it's only because there are no Canadian workers around to work, which is complete bullshit. So all that tells me is that no one is enforcing this. So they will come to us and enforce the rules for legitimate companies, right? Canadian companies that have apprentices and employees, and they're going to say, hey, where's your WMIS? We need to check this. We need to check that. Where's your apprenticeship cards? Are you licensed? Okay, let me see your card. But they'll turn a blind eye to these other companies, right? So this needs to stop, and it needs to stop immediately, because number one, to me, I go right to the safety aspect. Forget us losing work, forget all of that. You could potentially have people fucking burn alive in their homes. Okay, so that's first and foremost the biggest problem with all of this, right? Number two, it has to be fair across the board, right? If you're going to enforce all of these rules on and impose these rules on us, it has to be imposed on them, right? And if that's the case, then those guys should be fucking rounded up and kicked out of the country immediately. No questions asked, right? You don't get to come here and take advantage of hardworking Canadians because you found a little loophole and you're trying to save some money, right? Even a guy that's hiring these people should be investigated at the very least, because these guys, of course, these migrants are going to take advantage of an opportunity, right? They may be from a third world country. It's, times are tough. They have to get out of there. So, we would probably do the same thing if we were from one of these countries and we're struggling, we're starving. Somebody hands you a ticket, hey, say, look, you can make a good living in Canada. You're going to work long hours. You're going to make shit money. But you know what? It's a lot better than where you are. We would jump at the opportunity, which is why I say that the people hiring these guys need to be held responsible also for what they're doing, because ultimately they're in control. And it fucking pisses me off. Now, the aspect of us going down the line to now us as contractors, I don't know about you, Ben, but I've put in everything I have into this business, okay? I've put in my blood, sweat, and tears. I've almost lost my house for this business, okay? I've given it everything I have and will continue to do so until I have nothing left to give, right? So for me to stand by and stand idle while this shit goes on is wrong, and I will never stand by. And I will speak out. I will lead this conversation if I have to. Whatever we have to do it, and we have to do it now, because the second people catch wind of this and they find a loophole, believe me, you're not going to be the only guy that falls victim to this.
Yeah, and I would be hesitant to call it a loophole. I don't think this is a loophole. This is somebody straight up exploiting the system. And like you were saying, somebody gets a golden ticket to get to a better life. Why wouldn't you take it? But these guys it's not like a loophole where they're, I found a loophole where we can do electrical work without having apprentices or anything like that. There's no way that they're saying these guys are electricians or that they're doing electrical work. It's what I would kind of call like fly by night stuff, right? Like them working overnight just feels like a way for them to try and avoid health and safety. If you can do it outside of hours when your normal health and safety workers aren't around, why wouldn't you?
One of the potential loopholes, though, is if the company justifies it, which this is not really it kind of is a loophole, but I think it easily falls apart if you actually scrutinize it. So if they say these are not electricians, they're general laborers, they're just here to do construction labor, but
then you can't pull wire. You can't pull wire.
Exactly. So they can kind of like go that route, but like again, if you really scrutinize it and just like go on site or have someone accountable to oversee this, like that doesn't hold up. But like that could be a potential like avenue. They're hiring not electricians, but general laborers.
Which I'd be curious to see how do you prove that you've gone down the list of Canadian companies? Right? Are they being required to? Right? It's like, okay, look, I'm bringing these guys in. We're gonna have them do some general labor in this building, right? Who who's there? Who's the gatekeeper saying, okay, well, what do you mean? What kind of work are you doing? Are you sure that's only general labor, right? Have you contacted this contractor? Have you contacted that contractor? There needs to be someone there, right? And the law has to be enforced with them, especially when it's constantly being enforced with us.
Well, not only that, like, let's call it for what it is. You call it a loophole, call it whatever you want. And look, if there was, again, like in your province, Ben, if there's a shortage of electricians, which I'm pretty sure there's not, let's just call it for what it is. They're using our taxpayer money, right? So you, Ben, running your company, employing people, paying your taxes, they're using that money to bring these people here to undercut you. Okay? So how is, just on the basis of that, how is that fair? That's number one, right? We've already gone down the safety side, right? But how is that fair? How did, like what does that make you want to do? That makes me, like, I don't know. And for anybody listening, like, please, like, chime in the comments or anything. Like, I just want to know, how does that make you feel, where it's like, I want to run a legitimate business. I want to have my safety, I want to pay, workers' comp. I want to pay, just so we don't get in trouble. We can run a legitimate business and we can scale a business, right? So now they're taking our hard-earned tax dollars, bringing people here that they're using it under this loophole or whatever you want to call it, because we know this is not legal, and they're using it against Canadian businesses, right? Just on that fact alone, it's like, what are we talking about here, right? Has nothing to do with immigrant workers, has nothing to do with, I don't care what country you come from. We employ people from every country, right? We got 30 something employees. I'm telling you, we probably have, at least 20 different countries. It doesn't matter where you're from, right? What matters is, if we have to play by certain types of rules and certain standards to operate on the construction field in a certain manner, why is it that our tax dollars are being used now against us?
Totally. And you asked how that made me feel. Like, it kind of makes me feel like I want to fold up shop and do something else. Because how do you compete? You cannot. It's impossible at that level, right? Like $60,000 difference. Like, even if we're talking about that, if they can come in at 33% of what I bid every time, well, I'm just wasting my time. I'm spinning my wheels. I might as well give up while I'm behind, right?
Yeah, and just to touch base on what Charlie was saying, it's like, okay, estimators, project managers, this, that. Okay, you have a company that runs lean. You're a company with, 3-4 employees. You know what I mean? A lot of the times, the owner's the one that's doing it all, right? We've been there. Okay, so instead of a $90,000 bid, let's say, because you have project managers, you have estimators, you have a shop, you have this, okay, you eliminate that, take off 10%. You know what I mean? So 10% off 90 grand, you're talking 81,000, right? Labor and material. You're paying people fair wage, you know what I mean? Not even union rates, just like what we deem fair wage. You're paying your WSIBs and your workers' comps and your taxes and your payroll remittance. So there is no way somebody can get down to that number. There's two things. Number one, whatever program he's using on, he's not paying these guys. They're here for a free ride. He's selling them a dream, you know what I mean? And the second they probably complain, he's shipping them back. But he's using it under the program. So he's probably getting paid through the government. And again, this is all speculation, right? But there's no way you could do it for that amount. And the reason why I really wanted you to elaborate on this is because this is a serious thing. Because if this keeps happening, right, we're already seeing problems in the housing markets and, inflation high, whatever. You're going to do this to your blue collar guys?
Totally. And I'll call her my right hand lady. I won't say too much about her. She's from another country, came here to make a better, her mother and her came from another country, make a better life for themselves. And I've seen how they've struggled to come and start over. And she became an electrician, and she's a really smart young lady. And when we were going through the interview process, I looked at how she did in high school. She finished high school here, and I said, go to university, go be a doctor, change the world. You're brilliant. And she wanted to be an electrician. So gave her a shot. She stuck with us the whole time, and I've seen how she struggled and worked for it. And then to walk into a job site and see everything that she had learned and worked for to, to make the money she has, to get the certificates that she has, to try and work towards her red seal. And it was just like, what's the point? What is the point now? Right. So uh, in talking about this, you're totally right. The truth needs to be told, and we need to make sure that we preserve these skilled trades for the people who want to be in these skilled trades and who want to go through the process and learn their craft, and then come out the other side a competent, licensed, proper tradesperson. Even if that's at the very least. But so many things. Sorry, I'm just going to kind of get back to something that Charlie was talking about too. You and I have emailed back and forth so many times over the last couple of years, and I'm not really going to elaborate on the story here, but when you're talking about losing your house, like, you're right, man. I've been through all of that. I've gone through the struggle. We got screwed, as a couple of years ago. Sorry, last year, I should say. And we just about lost everything, and we clawed our way back to where we are now. So, like, yeah, this kind of stuff kind of drives me crazy.
Yeah, and honestly, there's a difference between having just a bad company come in and make a huge mistake on a bid, right? Because we see that all the time too. We've lost jobs where, we got undercut by a lot, and it just turns out to be just like a newer company, inexperienced, and then, more often than not, a year later, they no longer exist, right? But that doesn't happen often. That's just once in a while. As where if we don't do something about this now, it's going to be very, very hard to stop it when you just have thousands of these guys coming in, and they've actually built a system on their little foundation that they have now, right? And it's fully functional, because it's only going to get worse and scarier at that point, where there's going to be real talks of guys like us losing their companies.
Yeah, and to your point about having other companies come in, we've even known successful companies who they've got nothing going on right now, and they'll come and they'll undercut us just to keep their guys employed, just to keep their guys working. Like, we've seen that before too.
Yeah. And look, that happens. You also have companies that will, how should I say this? Let's just say that engineers may not be what they once were. So there's a lot of times where you'll be pricing a drawing, and you'll pick out a ton of mistakes, right? So that you can come in 10% lower, and you're just going to kill them on extras, right? Which is a tactic that a lot of contractors will use. But again, this is not that. This is different.
Yeah.
I think one thing to look at here is we're operating in a capitalist system, a free market system, right? And this is a game that's built off incentives and incentive structures. So, like, think about what we've been hearing in the media, in the news for the last 5-10 years, right? There's labor shortages, housing shortages, people can't afford houses, we need more housing, we need more developers, this and that. This system is incentivizing people like this. Like, they're incentivizing, like, speed, cost cutting, cheapest options, getting housing up faster, cheaper. But what that's doing, it's disincentivizing, proper apprenticeships, Canadian workers entering the trades properly, small businesses like bidding fairly, going through all the stuff you guys are talking about, the safety standards. So, I think a big part of this is due to the incentive structures that have just been forced upon us, and it's causing people to operate this way, because that's where the incentives are kind of driving towards.
Well, the reality is too, yes, there's incentives to build faster, do this, do that. But at what cost? Because if anything, in the last 5 years, safety has actually gotten a lot more stringent, right? The rules and regulations have gotten harder. They're not loosening on that. They're getting harder on it. So then if you're incentivizing, who are you incentivizing? Are you trying to help Canadians? Right?
Yeah.
Or
Clearly
or
not,
or
right?
or yeah, and this is what I get down to. Obviously whoever this person is that owns this company is obviously exploiting the system in a illegal way, right? Now, like you said, Ben, the reality is, the person that you bid to, I'm sorry, but I put him at fault as well, right? Because I know before we start a project, we need to send in, like our Form 1000s and, certificate of insurance. We need to send them a list of our guys and their tickets and, their whatever training they have, working at heights, yada, yada, yada. So, this just seems like they're kind of like all in on this. And if I'm not mistaken, and again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but from what I read, Ben, in your email, they were almost like gloating about this.
That's what it felt like. Yeah. Like I said, they feel like this is sort of a well-oiled, well-run machine. Look at what we can do. And I know you'll hear it from homeowners sometimes, things like, like, oh, what you guys do isn't that difficult. Why are you guys charging us $1,200 to put in a couple of receptacles? Stuff like that. It's like, well, if it's that easy, do it yourself and don't burn your house down. And then you end up going to basements where you see guys have wired it with extension cord and things like that. So, yeah, it's wild, man. I don't know.
I was just with somebody on the weekend, and he was telling me he needed some plumbing work done. And he said he got a price, and I think it was, the guy charged him the average. We don't do residential, but John, I think it's like $1,000 a fixture that they charge, right? Rough and finish, if I'm not mistaken. So he needed nine fixtures roughed in and installed. So it was like $9,000. And he looks at me like, buddy, that's nuts, right? I looked at him like, that's the going rate, man. So I'm like, so what did you do? He goes, I went to Home Depot. I watched some videos, right? And I did it myself. So look, good on you. If you feel that you have the ability to do that, but he showed me some pictures, and I could tell right away from the pictures, there's 5 things wrong just off the 2 pictures that I saw that were, not to code, that he could potentially have issues with down the road, right? And this is just one small area. So at the end of the day, I mean, look, you're going to want to cut corners and cut costs. And I think it's a reflection of just the world we're living in now, the economy and how expensive things are. People are naturally going to gravitate to try to save money.
No,
but
you're
at whose expense? That's my only thing.
Look, you're right on that, Charlie, but let's break that down for a second, right? Let's break what you just said down for a second. So this guy went to go do it himself. It's all not to code. Right? He's probably going to run into problems down the line. He probably took the risk because it's like, screw it. I'm going to sell this house in 1.5 years and 2 years. So now that problem becomes somebody else's problem. There's a reason why we have a code, right? There's a reason why in order to run a wire, in order to do this, in order to do that, you need to be like an apprentice. You need to be working under somebody, right? That's why we have building codes, man. You see what I'm saying? So yes, good on you. Like, look, you want to, you want to try to change handles on a house or, change light bulbs or whatever. But let's be honest, rough in a basement, touch gas, touch drains, touch electrical, what the hell are we talking about here? You know what I mean? Like, come on, guys, think about if we allow this to continue, think about what your city, your county, your state, your province, doesn't matter. Think about what that's going to look like in 10, 15, 20 years if we continue to allow this. It's going to look like a third world country. You know what I mean? You're going to walk in and you're going to see things and be like, how are they even selling? This house, you can't even live in here, right? So I'm going to push back on that and say, I'm sorry, when it comes to when it comes to the red seal trades, when it comes to, like structural framing, you know what I mean? Even it doesn't matter, even down to the roofers, okay, if you're a tradesman and you feel like, you're handy enough to get something done with help of a friend, sure, that's one thing. But now, when you're building multi-story residences where you have multiple families in there and what the hell, man? No, man. That's not our country. That's not North America, period. We don't allow that.
like I can see like this policy or this LMIA, being useful for general laborers and like places where there's shortage of workers, and it seems like the initial thought made sense, but now when it comes to these skilled trades, like you're saying, like there has to be some accountability. Like clearly there's no enforcement here, like no one is stopping this. And why is that? Like where are the inspectors here?
No, I'm sure they still need to have their jobs inspected. Like ESA will still come in, but ESA doesn't know who did the work. Right now you're just relying on a competent inspector to come in and look at the job, right?
Yeah.
And like Johnny's original point was like, look, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. We've been in the plumbing trade for over 20 years. I know almost every inspector in the city, right? Most of them will see my phone number and my name. Sometimes they don't even want to come out to the job, right? They're okay with pictures, and that's just because we've built a good relationship, and also they know that we don't cut corners, right? And that's one thing too. I always tell the client, inspections are a necessity, but at the end of the day, I don't do the inspection for you. I do the inspection for me, right? My name is on this job, so I'm going to test all the pipe. I'm going to make sure that everything is to code because my name is on this. My company's name is on this. I could care less what an inspector, who I know that we have much better plumbers than this guy, than this guy coming onto site who read a code book a few times, maybe was a plumber in the past, but I mean, don't rely on his expertise by any means, right? You should rely on ours. So my thing is like, yeah, is the guy reliable? Number one. So on to Ben's point and his job. So like that he lost. The guy will come in. He's going to look at maybe some boxes, some plugs. Is he going to go around and take a look at every single one and really kind of dissect it? I highly doubt it. Maybe he will. Maybe he won't. Right? You just kind of have to flip a coin and hope for the best ultimately.
But Ben, let me ask you this too. What about the licensed electrician that the guy's paying a fee just to come and handle the inspector? That guy too, right? Am I yeah, you know what I mean?
His phone number.
Right? So these are all people that I'm sorry, man, like if I was, if I caught wind of this and I was the powers that be, these guys would all be catching it. You know what I mean? And again, like, what is the repercussion? That's another question, right? What is the repercussion to this? You know what I mean? Okay, Ben, you lost the job, whatever. It all happened. It happens to all of us, right? But you didn't lose it fairly, right? So you didn't lose it fairly. The system's being exploited. And then on top of it, it's like, who are the candidates that allow this to happen? And I don't know, Costa, if you can pull that up, like, any data on that, like what are the repercussions to these guys? Because if it's just a slap on the wrist, you know what I mean? If this guy's getting free labor plus getting paid from the government, you know what I mean? And on 30 something thousand, he's making 15,000, and it's a slap on the wrist, and it's like, here's a $1,500 fine. Guess what's going to happen? Like, come on, man. It's just like any organized crime, right? What are they going to do? Like, all right, $1,500. I made 15,000. No problem. Here you go. Keep going.
Becomes a cost of doing business, right?
Now, what if it's let me flip it a little bit. Like, what if like they're operating in this fashion, but we're kind of assuming that the safety is not there and like they're doing things incorrectly. But what if they actually manage to do things the right way with these foreign workers and they actually legitimately passed inspections?
Yeah, which could very well be the case.
Well, and I'm sure it is. And I mean, like, whether or not it's done, probably is the inspector actually going to catch it versus like a proper electrician making sure that he makes every single one of his joints properly, he's connected every device properly, things like that. Like that's a tough one. That's putting a lot on the inspector. And when you have hundreds of boxes in a place like this that you've got to go and look at, they can't check every barrette, they can't check every wire, things like that. But you're right. Yeah, let's say they are doing it all right. Like, first in my mind is a policy issue, because again, back to the how is this a fair or even close to fair playing field when this company can come in and just crush everyone else's bids and get the job done, get it inspected, customers happy, company's happy, life goes on. Well, where's the place for every other contractor? Because I can't bid like that.
That's what I'm saying. That if that's the case, that changes the playing field on absolutely every contractor now. You have to change the way you operate your business at this point if you want to survive.
But it's not even that, Costa. Like, look, I'm gonna push back on that, and I know you're playing devil's advocate from the other side, but the reality is, again, I don't know your margin here, Ben, but even if it is 20%, 25%, it doesn't matter. When you take away all the profits, you still can't get down to that number. So the reality is there's some form of corruption going on. Is he stealing the material? Is it foreign material that is coming that is not approved? But again, it's wire. Like are they? I don't know. Like, are they paying the workers? But something has to give here, right? That's almost like saying. There's a Ferrari dealership. I'm going to open a dealership right beside there, and I'm selling the Ferrari at $50,000 brand new off the lot. Look, it's a Ferrari Enzo. There's no way. Like you can't build it for that cost, right? If the going rate right now is let's just throw numbers out there just to understand, right? If the going rate right now is $10 a square foot to build a house, okay? Let's just say hypothetically, it's $10 a square foot to build that house. Let's say 20% of that is profits on all the trades and whatever. Call it 25% because I know some people make a little bit more, some people make a little bit less, but let's average it out to 25%. Okay, so that's $7.50 a square foot to build, right? If somebody's coming in and saying $2, right? At what point are you going to sit there and say, no, wait, this doesn't make sense? Again, it's just numbers, right? Like the numbers don't lie. If to buy material to put up a structure like that, again, on the electrical side, let's say it is, $50,000. Okay, let's say it's $50,000. Okay,
Canadian
just the
emergency system.
Yeah, they're
just
listening to the podcast.
that's it. They're listening to it. See, it's an emergency. So let's say the cost of raw materials just to buy the panels, wires, boxes, pot lights, yada yada yada, blah 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 blah. Let's say it's 45, 50,000, right? Now you still need labor to put it in, and then on top of that labor, as a company, you're going to make a little bit. Even if the company says, all right, I'm going to do it for cost because I just need to turn dollars, which I know a lot of people are doing right now just to keep busy, but 90,000, 30,000, like, I'm sorry. I just, there's obviously illegal activity there.
Look, make no mistake. If someone's undercutting you by half, there's no pivot or change you can make in your company to compete and keep up with that. Okay? Let's make that very clear. So there's a company in Toronto, which I won't name. This is going back about 4 years, and they were kind of already following that model, and they were bringing in people from Albania. And I remember they had, I think they had in an apartment building, they had like 25 apartments rented out, and they would house like dozens of these guys in these apartments, right? They would feed them, they would give them an allowance, whatever, and they were paying them, like $10 an hour, but obviously housing and food costs were taken care of. And this went on to be like, and still is, a massive company in the city, huge. But for that period of time, nobody could compete with them. Like I was talking to some demolition companies who were also bidding some of the jobs, and they were calling me and asking me like, hey, do you know these guys? I'm like, no, man, I've seen them around. But he's like, buddy, these guys are like half of our price, but it doesn't even make sense. Like I no matter how hard I crunch my numbers and I keep shaving away, I can't even get close to their number, right? And that's what they were doing. They were just actually literally flying these people in, housing them, feeding them, and packing them into apartments. And these guys had no problem doing it. They were all single middle-aged men or younger guys in their 20s, had no families, no ties back home. They were ready to leave for a better life. And they just came here to concentrate on doing exactly that. So I ask you guys, how do you compete with that, right? If this becomes the norm and this becomes the blueprint, how do guys like us and anybody listening, how do you compete with that? I in my opinion, I don't think you can. This is why it needs to come to a hard stop. And back to the point that you guys were making about the inspectors, like forget all that. Even if it's done correctly, you can't even, because I listen. There's going to be some guys that are going to maybe make mistakes, but over time they're going to get better, and they're actually going to learn how to do it properly, right? And they're going to be costing this contractor a fraction of what we cost. So, obviously they're going to go that route. So what needs to happen is it needs to be enforced now before it gets out of control.
But like, what if this is just like an evolution on how construction and trades operate? Again, I am like, I want to steel man kind of the other
Yeah,
side.
yeah.
Right?
It's
So
good that
I'm all
you're
about
doing
like,
that.
I'm all about like free market, capitalism, doing things in the most efficient, cost-effective way. So back to the point of, again, incentives. We're looking for speed, developers to speed it up, clear the red tape, get housing going, right? So if a company is able to bring in workers from another part of the world, and the market allows them, like these workers are willing to work for $5, $10 an hour, they
That's
can.
below minimum wage, so that's against the law. So
Okay, minimum wage.
Even minimum wage,
Just
yeah.
call it minimum wage. They're able to train each worker, finish the job like 3 times faster because, they're working all these hours, and it passes inspection. Everything's done good. What is the market going to tell you? The market's going to see that as, shit, this works. This is efficient. Like, they're not cheating. They're getting the work done. Safety's taken care of. So, is this just that an evolution of the free market and how companies will operate moving forward?
And honestly, to your point, Costa, I'm glad you brought that up, because living in a country where I truly feel they've been actively trying to destroy Canadians in the last 5, 6 years, I wouldn't put it past them that this is actually a goal of theirs, right? They've been bringing in people by the millions, right? So to me, if there's no enforcement happening now, I don't see any enforcement happening in the near future unless we really kick up dust and make some noise about it. But you're absolutely right. If there's nobody there to stop it and people can save money and the work is passing, no houses are burning down, right? No houses are flooding. Why wouldn't a
Why wouldn't they do?
yeah,
Yeah. Why would they not
why
double
wouldn't a
down on
builder
this?
or a general, why wouldn't they go this route where they can cut costs by 50%,
so
right?
then so
You're
then
absolutely right.
so then what happens to the hoops that our companies have to go through to get proper apprentices
That's what I
and
mean. That is this an evolution where, like, you're just, unfortunately, you started your company at that time where you had to go through these hoops, and now the hoops are changing.
yeah,
Yeah, and
and look, it's a good steelman argument, but I know we've had discussions like about this, and I know it is off topic, but I kind of like get back to like the same thing where we're built on like you know we're built on these principles and values, and we're built on again, yes, free market, but at the same time you have to play within the rules, right? That like I'm all for free market as long as you're playing within everybody's rules, right? Everybody has to play by the same rules, right? So if you're not playing by the same rules, then I don't think it's fair, right? So that is no longer free market, because
No,
again,
but no,
let's think about, hold on.
yeah.
Let's think about, they're being brought here on a program funded by our taxpayers' dollars. You understand what I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
Costa?
for
So
sure.
so I feel like that argument is kind of dead right there, because
No, it's not though. But who you could, that program exists for you too though. You could play by the same rule. You're not restricted from using that program.
uh, there's a ton of plumbers that are waiting for that are looking for jobs. So I don't see how, like, I don't know. Look, Ben, you know, in Winnipeg, like, do you guys have a shortage of electricians?
No. And like, to that, every time I listen to one of the podcasts, I'm hearing about like the labor shortage. I know guys who are getting out of electrical to go do other things because they're constantly laid off. I think, just to quickly, you're right, it's a little off topic, but to get to that, it's like, companies always need apprentices, right? They're always looking for apprentices. Like, you're not going to pay $45 an hour for someone to carry pipe up a set of stairs, or do the grunt work of just pulling wire. So you need apprentices. You need a level 1. Well, they're only a level 1 for 1 year, so you got to find another one. And then, level 2, same thing. Level 3 and 4 follow the same path. And then you end up with, like, I was kind of crunching the numbers because I thought it was crazy. But in our trade school here in Manitoba, Red River College, like, they'll be pumping out 100 to 150 journeymen, 5 times a year. There's so many of them being added to the market, but where's all the work coming from? And then when you have a downturn, what does everybody go and do? And, like, I'll put up a job ad and I'll easily have 120 applicants within about 5-6 days. So
So, so that's one problem. That's one problem. And another thing that we didn't even bring up. You said how many workers were there on site? About 10?
10, 11, yeah.
10, 11. Okay, what's your ratio there?
Yeah, 0 to 0.
No, but like I'm just saying, what's the ratio
Oh, yeah, seriously.
in Manitoba? Isn't it 1 to 1?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. The legal limit's 1 to 1.
Okay, 1 to 1. So there's your steel man argument, Costa, dead. So we have to abide by the rules, which for every apprentice you have to have a license. Okay, now look.
This is an enforcement issue then. Like, enough people have to, like, raise their hand and be like, enough's enough. Like, we got to stop this.
Hence why this is the emergency podcast, man. Hence why, the second Ben sent this. Like, I know it took us a little while because we had a couple episodes we needed to get through. We had a lot going on, but this is extremely important, and I want to put this out right away. And truthfully, anybody listening, like, please comment, right? Because and share, right? Share as much as you can, because we, again, like, getting back to your thing, Costa, like, I don't want people to think that we're sitting here bitching and complaining, but the reality is this is not free market. This is not an evolution, right? You have, as an electrician, as a plumber, as HVAC, as, any red seal, there's a ratio. That ratio is not being met right off the bat. You know what I mean? So, okay, we went through safety, we went through this, we went through that. So now, okay, the guy is, like you said, he's hiring a guy just to come and do the inspection. Dude, it's all illegal. It is all illegal, plain and simple. And it's being done using taxpayer dollars. Charlie, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, for me, what it comes down to is this. At the end of the day, I just want it to be fair across the board, right? If I'm a law-abiding citizen and I look out the window and I see a bunch of fucking cowboys robbing a bank, right? I have a problem with that if I'm not allowed to be a cowboy and rob banks. But if you tell me, hey, listen, this is the way it is now, okay? There's no fucking rules. Anything goes. Hire anybody you want. Charge less. Then, you know what? Then that's the reality. And everybody's on an even playing field if that's the case.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm fine with that, right? But don't play these fucking games where you're gonna bully me, right? It's like, oh, you don't have enough journeymen, you can't hire any more apprentices. We're constantly have them breathing down our necks. Yet these guys are free to do whatever they please, right? So CASA 100%, it's an enforcement issue.
And that's what I was gonna, like, kind of sum it up with. It's like, again, I'm all about, like, free market. If this is the evolution, this is it. But it's you either enforce the rules or completely throw out the safety rules and regulation and let everyone have a free for all. It's one or the other.
100%.
Can't be both. It can't function off.
Yeah, no, you're totally right, and it's a policy issue. And when you give someone, near absolute power and next to no accountability, this is the kind of shit you end up with. So until you either have accountability where the people who are letting this happen, there are consequences to those actions, or you take away the power to do that, it's just going to continue. And then that just breeds corruption, in my opinion.
Funny enough, we had a contractor we did work for who was a contractor out of Quebec. And he came, and when he saw our pricing, he was like, he couldn't believe it, man. He was just like, what? This is like double of what we would charge back home, right, in Montreal. And when we roughed everything in, and I came in the next day for the inspection, and he had boarded everything up overnight, right? He had crews working all night long. So I look at the guy and I go, I'm like, why did you board everything? He goes, well, what do you mean? You're done, right? I saw you had a test on it. Everything's good. I go, yeah, it's good, but I have to get it inspected. He goes, what are you talking about? I go, yeah, I call for the inspection. I have to let it sit overnight. The pressure's holding, and now he's going to come and look at it and give us the green light. He looked at me like I was from another planet, and he goes, what the fuck are you talking about? That's not how it works where I'm from. He goes, in Montreal, we pay for the permit, and then it's, thank you very much, have fun, go do whatever you want to do. Once you have your permit in hand, you build it, and nobody comes and checks up on you. That's it. You're good to go. So what ends up happening is the prices are a lot lower because you're going to have cheaper materials that are used, right? That's not being enforced, right? Where you're supposed to use cast iron and XFR for fire ratings. You no longer have that. It's going to be ABS, right? PEX residential piping where it should be copper or Worsbo. And the list goes on and on and on. So, but this is what happens, and that's fine. Everyone's on the same page. And I think that's the point that Costa was making, right? Everybody agrees, look, I get my permit, I do whatever the fuck I want. So a $20,000 job is going to be $20,000 to the next guy because everybody's doing the same thing. And if that's the route you want to go and have, a subpar product, then by all means, just make it across the board, right?
Yeah, man, I can get on board with that. I've heard of places in Canada that do that too, where it's like, you guys are the experts. You have to carry insurance. Get your permit, build it, do your thing. If something F's up, well, that's on you.
Look, I can't even say I want to get on board with that because, like, look, I'm a tradesman, and I know what you meant, right?
Yeah.
I get what you were saying, but like for me, I don't want to get on board with that because I believe in a superior product, especially when it comes to trades, right? Like, we're not building snowmen here, man. We're tradesmen, and what we do is very important. Plumbing and electrical are two of the most important trades, okay? So I don't want to say that I'm like on board with it, but if that's the only choice I have, then I'm on board with it, right? If that's the way it's going to go.
Yeah, sorry. I'm on board with a level playing field. As long
Yes,
as everyone's
yes.
the same and not like, you got to do it fire rated, this guy doesn't have to.
Yeah, exactly.
Why?
Exactly. Well said. Yeah. So anybody listening,
But
sound the alarm.
Yeah, please share this. Ben, thank you for, wanting to share this. I know it was a little bit, iffy and teeter-tottering because again, obviously we never want to lose clients or never want to expose them. But the reality is, again, you have to sound the alarm, right?
Yeah.
And I'm glad you did it. I know this took a couple weeks. I wish we did it earlier, but here we are. And yeah, anybody listening, please, share this because, it's that common story, right? It's that common saying where nobody cares until it affects them, people will turn a blind eye and it's like, yeah, that sucks, but hey, it's not happening to me until it does.
Yeah.
And then that's when everybody's like, hey, did you hear this? Did you hear this? Like, what do you think? What do you think? And it's like, well, you turned a blind eye, right? So us as tradesmen, that's why I always say, we have communities that we built, we have very good friends in the industry, we operate in this industry and this is exactly what we do this for, right? To have a lot of guys on here, everybody sharing the story, what you do, what you encounter, what you're seeing. So I think this is an extremely important episode. And like I said, anybody, that's listening, please share it, comment, let us know what you guys think.
Also, too, John, sorry, anybody listening, just to add to what you're saying is if you're listening and you've experienced a situation like this, by all means, reach out to us, DM us, email us, whatever it is. We want to hear all of the stories because we want to talk about this and we want to make this known. And we really, really do want to sound the alarm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Well
that's
said.
great. Yeah. Ben, thanks so much. I think that's a good place to wrap here. And again, just to kind of sum up what you guys just echo what you guys just said, like this is clearly something that's starting to show up on more job sites. Either people probably don't even know what's happening or don't know what to make of it. And we just want people to be aware of what's happening. So like Charlie said, if you've seen anything like this, you're feeling the pressure from these kind of bids, share this episode with your network, with your crew, send us your stories. The more we hear, the better picture we'll have of what's happening. And yeah, But appreciate everyone for listening. Ben, thank you so much for jumping on here.
Ben, pleasure as always, buddy.
Yeah.
You're the best, Ben.
All right.
Good insights. I appreciate the conversation, guys.
Yeah, this was great. All right. We'll wrap there. And thank you to everyone listening. We'll chat soon.
Ciao, guys.
Ciao.